Good morning, you are watching A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sanov, and here are the top stories. US President Donald Trump has ordered reciprocal tariffs targeting countries that tax US imports. Munich Security Conference kicks off today amid tensions. 5 people have died and dozens injured after a bus accident in Turkey's Bingöl province. US President Donald Trump has ordered reciprocal tariffs targeting countries that tax US imports. The move risks a trade war with China and Europe and could disrupt global markets. Let's see how tariffs actually work.
The golden age of America begins right now.
US President Donald Trump is bringing tariffs back big time. He has proposed imposing 60% tariffs on all Chinese goods and 10-20% tariffs on imports from other countries, including those from Europe. It's a full-scale rewrite of global trade, and if history tells us anything, it won't just hit China. It could ignite another trade war with Europe.
Every country will be reciprocal. It won't affect everybody because there's some where we have similar tariffs. But the ones that are taking advantage of the United States, we're going to have it's reciprocity, it's reciprocal. We're going to have a reciprocal tariff. But the tariffs are going to make us very rich and very strong, and we're going to treat other countries very fairly. But if you think about it, other countries charge us tariffs. We don't charge them tariffs, and it's about time that changed.
But this isn't the first time tariffs have reshaped entire industries. To understand what could happen next, we need to look back to the 1960s, to a time when the United States and Europe fought over something a lot smaller than semiconductors or electric vehicles. They fought over chicken. In post-war Europe, American chicken was booming. By 1962, US poultry exports to Europe had surged to $76 million, equivalent to over $700 million today. European farmers weren't happy. They saw cheap US chicken flooding their markets. So, West Germany and France imposed tariffs. Price jumped, imports collapsed. Washington was furious. But instead of just retaliating against European chicken, the US imposed a 25% tariff on light trucks, which still exists today. Germany's Volkswagen was hit hard. Its truck sales in the US fell by half, and the company never really recovered in that market. Meanwhile, Germans paid more for chicken, and Americans had fewer truck options. It was a textbook example of how tariffs work. They protect some industries while hurting others. And 60 years later, that 25% truck tariff, it's still here. A short-term trade dispute became permanent policy. And that is the thing about tariffs. They are easy to start, hard to undo. Now, Trump is launching a new tariff war, and this time it's bigger than chicken. His new plan could hit everything from European steel to pharmaceuticals. Back in 2018, Trump's steel and aluminium tariffs led to full-scale retaliation from the EU. Europe imposed tariffs on Harley-Davidson, bourbon, and orange juice. Now, the stakes are even higher. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen condemned Trump's proposed tariffs as unjustified and warned that they will not go unanswered.
And against the backdrop that we know that there is a lot at stake, we discussed ways to strengthen a very pragmatic cooperation with the United States. There are clearly new challenges and growing uncertainties, so the European Union is prepared for a robust but constructive dialogue with the United States. When targeted, unfairly or arbitrarily, The European Union will respond firmly. This weekend we witnessed how steep tariffs were imposed on Canada and Mexico. Those tariffs raise business costs, they harm workers and consumers, they create unnecessary economic disruption and drive inflation. We do not see much good coming out of this. So we prioritize productive discussions and engage early. At the same time, the European Union remains also steadfast in its multilateral commitments, be it from our development aid to our climate targets.
If Donald Trump's tariffs trigger a trade war, what happens next? If Trump's tariffs move forward, some industries will benefit, especially in steel, aluminium, and domestic manufacturing. US manufacturers may gain short term, but costs often pass to consumers. Auto prices could rise as the industry depends on foreign parts. Retaliatory tariffs may hit US exports, lowering global demand. This isn't just about trade, it's about a shift in US economic policy. For decades, free trade drove global growth. Now, economic nationalism is back. The chicken war was a small dispute that reshaped industries for decades. Trump's tariffs could redraw the global economic map, and once that shift begins, there is no turning back.
US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met at the White House announcing key agreements on trade, defense and counterterrorism. The talks come as both countries seek to balance economic ties and security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific.
US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening economic and security partnerships. At a meeting at the White House, Modi announced a goal to double bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030. Donald Trump pushed to reduce the US trade deficit with India. The agreement comes after Trump unveiled a roadmap of reciprocal tariffs for every country that puts duties on US imports.
Today, the U.S. trade deficit with India is almost $100 billion, and Prime Minister Modi and I have agreed that we'll begin negotiations to address the long-running disparities. We can make up the difference very easily with the deficit, with the sale of oil and gas.
The U.S. will increase military sales to India starting in 2025. Trump confirmed that India will receive F-35 fighter jets, a move seen as a counterbalance to Chinese growing military influence. The leaders also addressed security concerns, with counterterrorism a key focus. Trump confirmed that the U.S. will extradite a suspect linked to the 2008 Mumbai attacks.
Today, I'm pleased to announce that my administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India.
We stand strongly together in the fight against terrorism. That criminal is now going to be handed over to India, an appropriate.
Beyond trade and security, discussions covered tariffs, energy exports, and strategic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Trump reiterated that India is set to become a key buyer of U.S. liquefied natural gas and nuclear technology. Both countries will now move forward with negotiations on a formal trade deal, while defense and energy agreements set to take effect in the coming years.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the new U.S. Health Secretary, confirmed by the Senate in a 52-48 vote. As Kennedy was sworn into the post, President Donald Trump signed an executive order to launch a commission to make America healthy again, focused on tackling chronic illness and childhood diseases. A longtime vaccine critic, Kennedy pledged to tackle the country's chronic disease epidemic. He will oversee key agencies including the FDA, CDC, Medicare, and Medicaid, serving over 140 million Americans. Thousands of Belgians took to the streets in protest over the new government's planned pension reforms in the first day of a multi-day strike that halted all air traffic in the country. The strike was also expected to disrupt public transport and postal services.
Protests gripped Belgian capital Brussels as thousands voice their discontent over the government's planned pension reform. The pension reform rewards those who work past retirement age with 35 years of service, while early retirees without 35 years face a penalty. Local police reported that 60,000 people had joined the strike in Brussels. Protesters clashed with police outside the headquarters of Liberal centre-right party MR, part of the governing coalition, with police using tear gas and a water cannon. Local media described similar clashes at the headquarters of another coalition member, Les Engages, a Christian Democrat party. Brussels airport cancelled 430 flights, a spokesperson said, adding that the disruption to the air traffic sector would last just one day. Further disruptions to public transport and postal services are expected. The new system is less favourable for lower income earners compared to the previous one, which provided a lump sum based on career length.
European NATO allies are insisting that Ukraine and Europe must not be left out of any peace negotiations the day after US President Donald Trump spoke to Russian leader Vladimir Putin on beginning the talks to end the war. William Denslow reports from NATO's headquarters in Brussels.
In response to President Donald Trump's comments, Kaja Kallas, the EU's top diplomat, along with a half dozen European nations, said that Ukraine must have strong security guarantees. Now, this comes after Donald Trump's Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, said that the US would not support Ukraine having NATO membership as part of its long-term security. Now, this is something that Kyiv has long been asking for, and something that NATO's officials have been saying they do indeed see Ukraine's future within the military alliance, although they haven't given any timeframes on when that might be. So this is a very strong response from European officials, and a real question now is how the alliance can come together. Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, speaking here at NATO headquarters, has said that it's not unusual for alliance members to not see eye to eye on every point, but he is confident that they will ultimately come together and come up with a solution that is best for Kyiv long term. A huge focus of this meeting here in Brussels of defence ministers is of defence spending. US President Donald Trump has long insisted that NATO's allies do more on defence. He wants to see especially European members of the alliance spend upwards of 5% of annual GDP on defence. The current benchmark is 2%. However, Mark Rutte says that he will adjust that and he'll provide a new benchmark a little later this year. This meeting in Brussels is a real focus on what exactly can be done when it comes to boosting defence capacities as well as defence spending, a crucial objective, according to Mark Rutte, not just for the security of Ukraine long term, but for Europe as well. William Denslow, A News, Brussels.
Ukraine will not accept any bilateral agreements on its fate reached by Moscow and Washington in its absence, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said. Zelensky also called for Europe to have a seat at the negotiating table. Stuart Smith has more in Kyiv.
President Zelensky said it was important that these negotiations about the future of Ukraine are not limited to a bilateral negotiation between Washington and Moscow, that Kyiv must be included, and so should other European capitals as well. He said that he did not think Trump calling Putin before him was any sign of President Trump's priorities, but did suggest it was unpleasant. The European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has also responded to the seeming exclusion of Europe and Ukraine from these first efforts at peace negotiations, warning against a quick fix or dirty deal. Ukraine, the EU and NATO are all of the opinion that Europe must be included in any discussion about Ukraine's future, with it being Europe that would be affected by the consequences of any peace deal. Now, in terms of what this means for Ukraine going going forward if it refuses to, for example, follow what President Trump and President Putin agree between themselves, possibly in Saudi Arabia, as has been hinted by Donald Trump. It could mean that Ukraine no longer enjoys US support, and to that end Europe has said that it will step up to fill any gaps in US economic or military support, that it retains what it said on the fact that Ukraine should be able to decide when it engages in negotiations and how they should take place and what the results should be. But it is a big gap to fill if indeed the US does start to apply pressure on Ukraine by threatening to make life harder for Zelensky, because President Trump has made it clear what he wants is a swift fix to this problem, which has now, since the full-scale invasion, been going on for nearly 3 years. Stuart Smith in Kiev for A News.
U.S. President Donald Trump says higher-level officials from United States, Russia and Ukraine will meet at the Munich Security Conference later today. Trump says that Ukraine would be involved in a peace talks with Russia. However, Ukrainian officials, including advisor Dmytro Litvin, deny reports of Ukraine's participation in joint talks with Moscow. Litvin says that Ukraine requires a unified position with the United States and Europe before engaging in talks with the Kremlin. He also added that no discussions are planned for the conference at this time. Around 5,000 police officers have been deployed to the Bavarian capital ahead of the start of the Munich Security Conference. Key leaders and officials will be attending, including U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The event comes a day after a car plowed into a crowd in the city, leaving at least 28 people injured.
High-profile officials will be descending on Munich for the security conference, which begins today at the Bavarian capital in Germany. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky are expected to be attending. The event comes a day after a car plowed into a crowd on Thursday.
We have very, very high safety standards. As far as the protection of the Munich Security Conference is concerned, we are deploying 5,000 officers to make Munich safe. The participants of demonstrations taking place here will be protected. That's why we have so many officers on duty. There is no such thing as 100% protection.
This year's meeting follows a phone call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin about stopping the war in Ukraine. Trump says that Ukraine would not be able to reclaim all its territory or join NATO. However, Kyiv says it doesn't expect to hold talks with the Russian side at the annual event. Zelensky believes the US, Europe and Ukraine need a common position before talks with Moscow.
Hamas said it would release the next group of Israeli hostages as planned, paving the way toward resolving a major dispute that threatened the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The group said Egyptian and Qatari mediators have affirmed that they will work to remove all hurdles and that it would implement the truce deal. The statement indicated that 3 more Israeli hostages would be freed on Saturday. There was no immediate comment from Israel. 5 people have died after a bus accident in Turkey's Bingöl province. More than 30 others are injured, according to local authorities. The incident happened when the vehicle was traveling toward Erzurum and veered off the Bingöl-Diyarbakır highway near Doğanca village and overturned into a ditch. A bus carrying 44 people veered off the road in Turkey's Bingöl province, approximately 8 kilometers from the Genç district, killing at least 5 people and injuring dozens. Governor Ahmet Hamdi Usta, speaking at the accident site, said that the vehicle was en route to Erzurum and lost control due to severe ice on the road and veered into a ditch. Emergency services, including 112 emergency health teams, the Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency, the National Medical Rescue Team, and gendarmerie units responded promptly to the scene. All injured individuals were transported to nearby hospitals for treatment. Initial reports point to icy road conditions as a key factor to the cause of the accident. In response, officials have increased monitoring of the Bingöl-Diyarbakır highway to assess road safety and prevent similar incidents. Turkey is set to receive 1.3 trillion cubic meters of natural gas from Turkmenistan through a swap deal with Iran starting in March and continuing until the end of the year. That's according to Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar. Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar said that 1.3 billion cubic meters of natural gas from Turkmenistan will be sent to Iran and then transported to Turkey's Gurbulak entry point through the Iran-Turkey natural gas pipeline. Bayraktar's remarks followed his announcement on February 11th regarding the Turkey-Turkmenistan agreement to start the Turkmen gas supply on March 1st.
Turkmenistan stands out as a major producer and supplier of natural gas, delivering its resources to Turkey and, more importantly, transporting them onward to Europe, where demand continues to grow, is of strategic significance. While our infrastructure is prepared, a critical challenge persists, resolving the legal status and transit issues of the Caspian Sea. Establishing a pipeline across the Caspian would enable the transportation of significantly larger volumes of gas to both Turkey and Europe. Achieving this goal remains our primary objective.
Commenting on potential new deals with other countries, Bayraktar said that Turkey is currently working on various projects regarding both import and export. He emphasized ongoing initiatives to broaden the country's gas export capabilities while simultaneously working to diversify its energy sources. Bolivia is launching a long-awaited steel plant backed by Chinese investment to reduce reliance on imports. The Mutun facility will begin operations this month, marking a major step in the country's industrial expansion.
A China-funded steel plant in Bolivia that was first proposed 50 years ago is set to begin production this month. The move marks a major step in the country's industrialization efforts. The Export-Import Bank of China is funding the $546 million Mutun plant. It'll be operated by China's Sinosteel Engineering and Technology for its first year. Located near the Brazilian border, the facility is expected to produce 200,000 metric tons of steel annually, including rebar and wire mesh, valued at $260 million. Bolivia currently imports steel from Peru and Brazil, but the plant's output will cover half of domestic demand. Officials say the project is a major turning point.
We are going to cover the domestic market. We are going to cover 50%. When we cover 100%, we will build another plant, much better than the current one. With that plant, we will cover 100%, and with the surplus, we can export.
It's set to process 66,000 tons of raw materials monthly, using iron ore from a deposit that Bolivian officials say holds one of the world's biggest iron ore reserves with 40 billion tons. This plant is expected to create 700 jobs initially, expanding to 1,000. Officials may build a second plant once domestic needs are met, though no timeline has been given.
Europe's tallest volcano, Mount Etna, put on a show with plumes of smoke rising from its summit and lava flowing from its crater, as Sicily is recording ongoing seismic activity with several earthquakes.
Standing at more than 3,000 meters over the Sicilian landscape in Italy, Europe's tallest and most active volcano released a massive eruption of lava, fire, and gas high into the air on Wednesday morning. At 10:30 a.m. local time, lava started seeping from a crack on the southern slope of the crater called Bocca Nova, which means new mouth. No sign of changes were recorded in the volcano's perimeters, according to experts. Italian media reported there were no alarm alerts, with authorities tracking the situation. In 2013, UNESCO added the volcano as a World Heritage Site, recognizing its strategic geological location and its impact on the local culture and economy.
We are done for now, but don't go far. Stay tuned for more and have a wonderful morning.